Eduardo, should you get title insurance if you buy a house, a condo, land in Cabo?
Yes and no. Yes, simply because it adds a comfort level that may be recommended for people that are faint of heart. Let me explain myself. Title insurance in Mexico is more of a recent phenomenon. We're probably looking at 20 years, past. Before we really didn't have it. We had safeguards in place that were not in place in the US or Canada. In the US, you really don't know if your seller is, there might be some things outside the chain of title. There might be some covenants related to that piece of land that you might not know of. So there is a lot of things going on that you as a buyer do not know. So you basically say, okay, I'd rather just buy my title insurance, pay the premium, and not worry about the cost associated to, possibly litigating my my piece of land after purchase. And so that's why it was commonplace in the states, and it was obviously a requirement for getting like finance and wanted a mortgage. You certainly had to have title insurance in the states and Canada, basically common law jurisdictions. In civil law jurisdictions like Mexico, you really don't know. Well, I'm sorry, you do know who your seller is as opposed to the states, because there's going to be an owner of record that's going to be, again, registered. You have a notary public in place who's an attorney, licensed by the state, bonded. They're not going to risk their notary public license, which is a big deal, for a specific transaction which they can't vet as far as the proper title goes. The one thing that is lacking in that system of property registry, notary public, that area of getting the certificate of no liens, everything like that, is that when you come to a point of purchase in Los Cabos, for example, or in Mexico generally, the law of notaries only requires that the notary go back in time to your seller's title. That's it. If you want to go farther back than that, the notary will not relate to it. So you don't know who your predecessor in interest is. And so there might be something out there. But again, you have much more recourse because, hey, you bought it from the owner of record. You got this through a public deed and it's recorded. So you are a buyer in good faith. And so if something happens, you are adjusted your losses by your seller, and that's actually an obligation that is inherent to, and sometimes you can waive it. I wouldn't recommend waiving it, where basically the obligation is on the seller to assure proper title, and so that's on not on the notary, that's on the seller. So with that explanation, going back to the yes part of the title insurance, yes, you want it when you know there's certain funky things that you know of. I don't know why you would know that, but sometimes you do have certain knowledge of a particular piece of land. If there's a lot of history, there might be some probate issues, some issues among the seller's family that you know about. So yeah, getting title insurance basically assures you that you will have a third party come in and do an independent research of the chain of title that can go back 100 years. I mean, I've seen people do their homework on title searches because as an attorney, we probably can go a little bit farther than a notary, but at least my practice would not entail that because there's a lot of expenditure involved. And sometimes, as I know, land has been within a particular developer, maybe 20, 25 years. There's no one that will have better title in the universe than that seller. But if you have this title insurance in place, you can certainly go back all these years, 100 years, 80 years, 50 years, and they can basically say, okay, this is that, there's a hiccup here, and you get title insurance. So I do recommend that title insurance be in place. Sometimes also because it's a requirement for lending practices because it's commonplace in the States, so they get it here. And there are several title insurance companies in place that issue those title insurance. The problem that I've seen throughout the probably 15 years, the exceptions to the title insurance have gotten to be so big that it really goes against the heart of, well, why get it in the first place if there's going to be all these exceptions that really render it moot, and I'm just going to be paying this premium, which is a high premium actually, as if you compare it to the cost in the States. title insurance in Mexico is going to be expensive. But again, it's also part of comfort level. It's a part of, if you're faint of heart, by all means get it. But if you do encounter a problem, the title insurance companies, basically their businesses as any insurance companies, is not necessarily paying out those premiums, right then and there. There might be some pushback and saying, okay, well, remember, these exceptions are across the board, and this is one of them. And if you didn't give me this specific, certificate regarding the meets and bounds, which is more or less what always happens, well, not always, but in the event of certain discrepancies, then you say, well, there might be not necessarily across the board a recommendation for that. But I certainly recommend that to clients that are looking into pieces of property. They're not within a master plan community, that we know that we probably need an added layer of protection. So yeah, that's a long answer, but yeah, there's certainly some things that need further explanation, such as the case of title insurance, a little bit of its genesis and its applicability in Mexico.